Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to start off with a 14-ounce stainless steel tumbler from Michaels. I added the first layer off camera. I forgot to film that part, but I am going to do a silver flake method. I have no particular way of doing this. I just kind of added the Mod Podge and I just blotted the flakes on top. You'll be able to see it here in the video. I kind of just freelanced this. I didn't really have any design in mind. I kind of just went for it. As you're applying this, you kind of want to rub it on after you're done applying all of them, and you might want to use a glove because as you can tell, it got so glued on to my finger. Once I feel that the Mod Podge is a bit tacky, I go ahead and rub the excess off. And I make sure to rub just to get the flakes off. So when I go to apply my first layer of epoxy, it does not smudge everywhere. I had already applied my first layer of epoxy prior to this layer. I believe that was 10 milliliters, so 5 of part A and 5 of part B. This is 10 of part A and 10 of part B. I went ahead and added a second layer just because some of the flakes were still very exposed. And I also did have a lot of debris on the tumbler. Specifically for the tumblers with a handle, I always have trouble applying epoxy to them. So what I like to do is I apply my epoxy first onto the handle and then I move on to the tumbler. You want to make sure that your epoxy is spread out evenly just to get an even coat. I have made the mistake of applying a heavy coat and I have had it kind of move and drip. It wasn't evenly spreaded, so I did require more sanding with that project. As for this one, I went ahead and made sure that the epoxy was evenly distributed throughout the entire tumbler. Once I get my coat of epoxy smooth as I can get it, I go ahead and go in with my torch just to pop any air bubbles. Once I am done with that, I go ahead and let it spin for about 6 hours, depending on the brand and the temperature of your work area. So after that, I go ahead and I sand down wherever I need sanding. I like to do the top rim. I never used to do this before and I never realized how important it is. I learned this from, I believe her name is Jessica from Flynn Sisters Boutique, because it creates a final seal for your tumbler. You can also save this for the very last step, but I just like to go ahead and clean the top rim just so I don't have too much to clean up afterwards, because I am still gonna go in with another layer of epoxy. Whenever you are sanding over glitter, flakes, or any sort of decal or design, you want to make sure you lightly sand over it depending on the layers of epoxy you have, just so you don't ruin the design underneath the layers. Whenever you are working with a tumbler with a handle, you want to be very careful when you're sanding. You do not want to sand through your layers of epoxy. That has happened to me and I have had to go back and fix it. Also, when you get down to sanding the bottom rim, you want to be very gentle to not sand down too far down. Once I am done sanding down my entire tumbler, I go ahead and spray my tumbler and hands with 91% rubbing alcohol. And I learned this trick from Jessica, also from Flynn Sisters. Now we can go ahead and finish prepping for decals. So I went ahead and cut out my decal with my Cricut. I used the offset feature in Cricut Design Space, and this is the decal I will be adding to my cup. Whenever I am layering vinyl, I like to use a Cricut mat to hold down the first layer just to be able to apply it correctly. I also have seen people use the parchment paper method, but I couldn't find mine at the time, so I just went ahead and used my Cricut Joy mat to hold it in place. Whenever you're applying your decal to your tumbler, you want to make sure it's to a clean surface. Otherwise, your vinyl can lift during your layer of epoxy, and the epoxy will get underneath the decal and make it impossible for the decal to stick back down to your tumbler. You also want to make sure that you are really rubbing this vinyl down to prevent any air bubbles. If you find any air bubbles whatsoever, you can go ahead and try to squeegee them out, or just pop them with your weeding tool or an X-Acto knife. Once that is done, you can go ahead and apply your final layer of epoxy. Like I said before, I always like to start off with the handle because I find it much easier to do the handle than doing the entire tumbler. For this last layer, I believe I mixed 10 milliliters of both part A and B, which made it into 20 milliliters. When working with any tumbler that has a handle, you are going to find the epoxy getting a little clumped at the inner and outer edges of the handle. What I like to do is I wipe off any excess, and I make sure that there are no air bubbles or any excess epoxy hanging in there. Once your final coat is smooth, go ahead and take your torch once again to pop any air bubbles. Make sure also that the rim does not have any excess epoxy or any air bubbles trapped in there. Once you are done with that, you want to go ahead and let your cup spin for about 4 to 6 hours. Again, it depends on the brand of epoxy and your temperature of your work area. Once that is done, I go ahead and clean off the rim, any excess epoxy. When you're cleaning the inside, you want to be very careful and not to scratch the inside of the tumbler. Once you're done taking off any excess epoxy, I like to spray down a coffee filter with some rubbing alcohol and go ahead and clean the entire tumbler. So that is pretty much it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you.